Let's stick with the economy. You'll remember Labor promised during the campaign to keep the Morrison government's Stage 3 tax cuts due to come into effect next year. Here's the Prime Minister. He wasn't Prime Minister then. Here's the opposition leader back in May.
They've been legislated. We support them. We stand by that. They've been legislated. We support them. We stand by that.
Yeah, pretty clear, just like Labor's promise, of course, to cut our power bills by $275 a year. How's that looking for you? But the opposition says the government is laying the groundwork now to wind back those tax cuts. A little earlier, I caught up with the Deputy Liberal leader, Sussan, and I started by getting her thoughts on what I suggested was Jim Chalmers' Socialist Manifesto.
I think that's actually right. I don't know, values-based capitalism, what does it actually mean? It means the Labor Party's latest version of socialism, which is at their heart who they actually are. And I think it's extraordinary, and I think quite a few people in the Labor Party think it's extraordinary as well. But, you know, we've had the longest period of prosperity in Western liberal democracies, and it is because of capitalism. And of course there are government interventions when there need to be. And of course there is a safety net as we have in Australia. And of course there is a robust sector that is there for you if you have a disability or a sickness or you're disadvantaged. But what Jim Chalmers is trying to recast is something altogether different. And yes, I think it's been met with collectively raised eyebrows around the country, and that's putting it mildly.
Well, it should be more than a raised eyebrow, because this is an actual act of electoral deception, because there was no mention of this during the election campaign. The idea was if you vote Labor, they're going to be pretty safe and steady on the economy, keep things pretty much as they were. Yet now Jim Chalmers is talking about the government getting involved heavily in many sectors, co-investing with industry, guiding the direction of industry policy, of housing policy and of electricity policy.
That's exactly right. And I think it was about 13 months ago that Anthony Albanese said, trust us, there will be renewal, but there will not be revolution. Now that is actually what he said. So this is another broken promise. And remember the promises he made about your power price coming down, about your real wages going up, about your mortgage getting cheaper. All of those promises have also been broken. And that really big promise about leaving no one behind, and this collection of broken promises, is leaving huge cohorts of the Australian population behind. I'm in Melbourne and I've been visiting suburban small businesses today, and I can tell you there's a lot of anxiety both within the businesses and within their customer base just about that cost of living increase. It's not something we're just talking about, it's something we're seeing happening in front of us. And for Anthony Albanese and his team to head off on this frolic, which is not rooted in the real world economy in any case, is going to disadvantage Australian families and businesses.
Well, it's deeply worrying, and I've spoken at the top of the show about what might be motivating this, and obviously there must be an element in this in softening up the population. When he talks about wealth redistribution and the like, do you fear that Labor are trying to soften up the electorate to break their promise to stick with the third phase of the tax cuts due in 2024?
Of course they are, and that's exactly what this is all about. I mean, it's about the rest of the Labor agenda, which is tax more, spend more, interfere more. But of course it's about the Stage 3 tax cuts. Now, these are tax cuts that millions of Australians were promised, millions of Australians deserve, and millions of Australians are expecting, and they're legislated. So for them to be unwound would require further legislation to pass the Parliament. But we know that we're being softened up, or the Australian public is, and it would come, if it does, at the worst possible time, when prices are going up, when cost of living, power, energy, cost of manufacturing, supply side challenges all around the world, and then to add a tax impost on top of that would be the worst thing that you could do in the current economic environment. So we're here in Victoria, Chris, the Peter Dutton and the shadow cabinet, the cities, the country regions, in the seats we won, in the seats we lost, in the seats that are held by independents. We're fighting in every corner of this country to hold this government to account and to make sure that out there hard-working Australians get to keep more of their money, and it doesn't belong in the government's pockets.
Well, this is the point. It's not about giving any government money to anyone. It's like allowing people to keep much more of their income. Look, it'll get through if they change their mind on this. The Greens will support it. They'll get it through the lower house and the Greens would support it in the Senate. But to me, apart from some ideological hit on the rich as they'll try to sell it, to me it's just absolutely idiotic economically as well. But it's not as if there's Labor's putting any limits on its budget deficits or the amount of debt the government's got. It's not as if they're trying to balance a budget here.
No, they're just going back to their basic big spending disposition. And, you know, this rhetoric about the rich is pretty outrageous when you think of the more tax that would be paid by teachers, by mechanics, by people in the mining sector who are saving for their future, by small businesses that are doing well, maybe some years, but certainly not others, and by just every single hardworking Australian. It's, you know, you show me, Labor Party, who does not deserve a tax cut.